I want to share with you why these are one of the most important veggies that you can grow to sustain yourself. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. And when I say one of the most important things, there are other things that I would consider to be most important to get all of your calories that you need. But when it comes to greens, even though these ones are a purple variety, these are actually one of the most important things you could grow. When it comes to greens, they are the most important vegetable that you could grow. Yes, there's things like potatoes that would be even more important to get calories, but kale, it has 5 incredible reasons to grow this plant. Now, number 1 on the list is the fact that kale is just crazy easy to grow. Now, there's many different varieties. You got purple kale, you've got green kale, you've got kind of a flat kale and a frilly kale and all kinds of different varieties. But like this summer particularly, we had a very hot summer, and so a lot of the greens that we grew, or various greens that we had, just did very, very poorly. Actually, all of them did poorly, excluding the kale. The kale just powered right through it, seemed to have no trouble whatsoever, and so our lettuces just did absolutely pathetic. Our other brassicas, those would be things like kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, these various plants, they just did very poorly. They did very poorly, but the kale just, no problem, just kept going right through. So number 1, if you want a plant to grow during any kind of time, including difficult times, you want something that is resilient, we would say. And so kale is extremely resilient, very easy to grow. That's number 1. But number 2 is that kale can actually stay in the ground through the winter. That's incredible. So you can keep these in the ground till spring, unless you live in a region that consistently stays below about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's around negative 15 Celsius. So if not, you can just leave. I mean, you look at this. They're just covered with snow. And by the way, you may know that kale actually ends up tasting better after there's been some frost, biting it. And so it gets more tender, it gets sweeter, the starches end up breaking down into carbohydrates or sugars, and so it actually gets sweeter. So this is just awesome. I mean, how great that in weather like this, I can come out and I can just snip some kale away, bring it in, and either eat it raw or cooked, which I like it personally cooked. I mean, we eat it raw from time to time, but really I like cooked kale. I like the taste of it. And now, if you live in one of those areas that gets much colder, you might want like a low poly tunnel and something, a covering there where you can just cover them up. It's like a mini greenhouse almost, and that will keep the snow off of them. It will keep them from getting down too cold in the right climate. I mean, if you're in negative 40, it may get them even in a little tunnel. But in general, in most places that are not too cold, you can just grow these things all winter, which is just incredible. So that's an option there. How many things can you grow all winter? Well, you can keep carrots in the ground for a long time. They get harder to get out after the ground gets too, frozen. Same thing with parsnips, Jerusalem artichoke. You can keep these in the ground all winter. So there's several things you can keep in the ground all winter, and you can go harvest them at any time. But kale is just one great candidate to grow really year-round. Number 3 is that kale is just ridiculously nutritious. You may have heard of the ANDI score, ANDI, which stands for Aggregate Nutrient Density Index. It's basically an aggregate of the information on the nutrition on plant foods and looking at specifically which ones are the most nutritious, which ones have the highest density of nutrition in them. And kale is tied for the very top. If you want the highest level of nutrition, kale is 1,000. So once you hit 1,000, you're at the very, very top of the nutritional index score. And kale is tied for a few other things right there at one of the most powerful foods that you could possibly eat. And so it's extremely important there. When you think about the nutrients that you can get out of it, in something as simple as 2 ounces, and when you're talking 2 ounces, I mean, that's nothing. In 2 ounces, you get 170+% of your vitamin A. You get like 110% of your vitamin C. In 2 ounces, you get over 500% of vitamin K. You also have calcium, you have omega-3 fatty acids. So this is really just a powerhouse. And so if you only could grow a number of things, one of the things you'd probably want to grow is kale, just because the density of nutrition that you're going to get in this power pack plant. Number 4 is something you probably never thought about, and you might actually think, well, I think that's a negative, but it's actually a positive if you're looking to grow your own food. And so number 4 is that as far as greens go, kale is high in calories. And you might be thinking, Chad, I'm trying to lose weight. Listen, if you ever had to raise your own food completely, losing weight won't generally be a problem. The reason why most people struggle in North America, and I don't say this to be pejorative, to put people down, it's just a fact that 70% of Americans are overweight. They struggle with their weight, and it's not because, I assure you, it's not kale, right? That's not the problem. But if I remember correctly, you look at something like just regular old lettuce. If you get one of those boxes of lettuce that might be a pound, it's something like 60 calories in a whole pound. And you think, well, that's great. That's great to lose weight. It is. But if you're looking to raise your own food, you're looking to get enough calories, not too little calories, or you're going to be in trouble. And so having a green that has roughly 225 calories per pound, that's not a ton. You would still, most people are just going to be losing weight on kale. But if you had to eat a lot of it, there's at least enough calories that, you'd have to eat you'd have to eat nearly 10 pounds a day to get all your calories. Nobody's just going to eat 10 pounds of kale a day, but if you had to, that's what you'd have to do to get all your calories. But the point is, it's a high-calorie green, which is important when you're looking to grow your own food. Number 5 is that research that was shown in the Journal of Nutrition and Cancer revealed that higher intake of cruciferous vegetables. What are they? Well, those are vegetables in the brassica family, which I already mentioned, which would be kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, and these kind of things. Those who have a higher consumption of this have lower levels of stomach cancer. So that being the case, this is a fantastic food to eat. This is, obviously it's an association there, but you can imagine eating those kind of foods are probably some of the best foods that you could possibly eat. And so when it comes to your health, when it comes to just packing on nutrition, not packing on the pounds, but packing on nutrition, you get that in kale. You can eat it fresh, you can put it in stews, you can dry it and make chips out of it. On so many levels, this is just an incredible plant. Now, you can typically plant it in the spring, probably 5 to 8 weeks before the last frost in the spring. So you get to plant it super early. So you get to have something growing very, very early in the season. And that's quite exciting because we gardeners, we kind of dream about the things we're going to be growing. We're thinking about it. We're thinking about it once fall comes and everything dies down. We're starting to think about, man, what's coming out next year. And through the winter, we're maybe looking at the catalogs thinking, what are we going to buy this year? Or you're saving your seeds. Now, when it comes to kale, by the way, it is a biennial. What does that mean? What that means is, so I grew it this year, and you say, okay, well, where's your seed? Well, since it's a biennial, that means it doesn't give seed the first year, it gives seed the second year. So next year, what will happen is it will begin to grow. By the way, in the winter, I'll get back to that point, but in the winter, this will really probably not be growing right now. It's alive, it's kind of like out here, and it's a refrigerator or a freezer. But once you get far enough into the winter where the sun is not out long enough, you don't have enough hours in the day giving sunlight, the plants go into kind of a hibernation. It's not really hibernation, but we'll just call it hibernation, where they just kind of rest. They don't grow, but they stay there. They're still great to eat. It's healthy. It's ready for you to eat. But you have to plant enough, and you have to have enough so that you can gather it all winter, because it won't grow. So when I cut the leaves off of this now at this time of year, it won't continue to grow them. Now, spring, maybe February, somewhere in February, March, they'll start actually growing again. So the areas that you've cut off, slowly, you're going to have more coming out the top at that point. But it will not just grow. So if you just cut all the leaves off right now and be like, okay, come on out, I'm waiting for the next leaves, that's not going to happen during the winter. But you can still have enough if you plant enough that you'll be able to eat all winter long. When it comes to growing it, you don't plant it. Like, for instance, you wouldn't want to plant it in December in your, outside. Nothing's going to happen. You plant it, at least where I live. I'm in zone 5. So it's a relatively cold area, not an incredibly cold area, but in zone 5, and you can look up your own agricultural zone wherever you are. And in zone 5, probably about the end of August, you would be planting your winter kale. Now, some of your kale may come from the spring and just go right through the winter. That's fine too. But if you're going to grow some later on, you're probably, at least where I live, you don't want to plant it any later than probably the end of August, maybe early September. But really the end of August would be best to have your harvest throughout the winter. And so those are 5 reasons why I find it extremely important to grow kale. It's versatile, can be put in various dishes. It has plenty of calories, incredible nutrition, potentially cancer fighting, and it grows in the winter. I mean, this is incredible. And I enjoy it too anyway. I like the flavor of it cooked. I really do enjoy it. And so if you have any other additional reasons you like kale or and anything you'd like to share about it, please share down in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. And by the way, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. We have videos on foods to grow in difficult times, and then just homesteading, living in the country living. And so if you like it, hit the thumbs up button, share it with a friend. God bless and have a fantastic day.